Hey everyone, C-Stand here with the Lord of the Rings, the Living Card Game, and the start of a new segment on in-depth quest reviews. And I figure what better place to start than what I consider to be the hardest quest currently in the game for a solo player, which is Nightmare Escape from Dol Guldur. So in this segment, I'm just going to go over the quest in big picture and then take a look at some of the individual cards, what challenges they face, what challenges players face when going up against the quest. And at the end, I guess I'll give a little of my own input on how I would build a deck specifically to take it down. And then I'll follow it up with a video with an actual attempt at beating it. So to start, I'm just going to give a little bit of a background on what the base version of the quest is. So Escape from Dol Guldur, at this point it's a pretty old quest. So if you've been playing the game for a while, you may have forgotten many of the aspects to it. Or if you're a new player, you might have it all fresh in your memory. But I'm just going to go over it anyway. And we're going to get just a basic refresher course on what the quest is like. So in Escape from Dol Guldur, one of your heroes gets captured, turned face down, and is totally unusable until he gets rescued. And this, I think many players consider to be the most difficult aspect of the quest. Losing a hero from the start at random means that, well, essentially you're going to be out one resource a turn from the beginning, which is often the hardest part of the quest, and you won't have that hero action or that hero's ability or that hero's sphere. So if you've built a tri-sphere deck, you're not going to have access to a third of your cards. So this makes it really challenging. What many people end up doing is just designing, because the quest is so difficult, they will design their deck with a specific hero in mind as their captive hero. And they'll just keep resetting the game until that hero gets captured. When it's not captured, they'll just say, okay, that's a loss, I'll restart. And I definitely have done that myself. I find that it is so difficult to, especially in solo play, to design a deck in which any hero can get captured and you can still have a reasonable chance of success, especially for one of the hardest quests in the game. I think they've improved a little bit on their captive mechanic in recent quests. So there's the Urukai quest in the Saga expansions where one of your heroes gets captured, and in that case you actually get to choose. So it's effectively amounts to the same thing here, only you're losing a bunch of times before you end up with the hero you want captured. Okay, and on top of that, you start with 3 guarded objectives in the staging area. And these 3 objectives, they all come with an encounter card during setup. And so it can be very swingy in terms of your start. You can end up with 3 horrible cards. You can end up with 3 treachery cards that whiff. So in addition to you being down a hero, you're already up 3 encounter cards. It seems extremely unfair to the solo player because, I mean, in 4-player, you have the same amount of encounter cards starting in the staging area, 3, as you do in single player. So there doesn't seem to be a sort of scaling factor for multiple players in this scenario, especially given that your loss of your hero doesn't really scale that well with multiple players either, right? In the basic version of the quest, you still only capture one hero if there are 4 people playing. So if you are planning on playing the base version of the game, I would just recommend, if it's too difficult, throwing in an extra player or an extra hand and playing 2-handed or 3-handed or 4-handed, because it can make the start a lot easier, and that's the hardest part. Okay, on the other side of stage 1, you've got this effect. The players as a group cannot play more than 1 ally card each round. And so this is where it really hits the multiplayer groups pretty hard. So as a group, not per player, can you only play 1 ally. So you're playing 4 players, only 1 person gets to play an ally each turn. And that can be very difficult because the encounter deck just keeps pumping out enemies, and you've got to deal with them with your just increasing your board state by 1 character a turn. If your character dies, then you are pretty much back to the beginning of the turn in terms of your board state. Now, there are ways to get around this. There are cards that put allies into play rather than play them. So one example is Vilya. So you can use Elrond and Vilya to get an extra ally into play that you normally wouldn't be able to because you've already played an ally. Another example is a very good tail. You could churn out a bunch of allies if you keep chaining very good tails one after another and getting allies out of your deck. So if you are playing multiplayer, I recommend strongly to pursue that strategy of these card effects that put allies into play. Like another example is Elfstone that you attach to the location. And Sneak Attack and is another example. Okay, and you can't advance until you've claimed 1 objective card. Here are the objectives. It costs 2 threat to claim an objective once it's freed of encounters. The map causes the attached hero to not be able to attack or defend. The torch causes the player to raise their threat by 2 each round, and the key deals a damage to the attached hero each round. Okay, and then the stage 2, so once you've actually claimed an objective and have placed 9 progress, you can advance to stage 2. And stage 2 is where you can actually rescue your hero. So after placing any number of progress tokens on the card, flip the prisoner hero card face up and place 1 damage token on it. The hero has been rescued and may now be used by its controller. Note that that is a response, so it is not a forced effect. When you place progress, if you are not ready to rescue your hero, you can decide to pass. Now, why might you say, would you want to not rescue your hero? It's because this effect on the Nazgul of Dol Guldur, it says after the prisoner is rescued, move him to the staging area. And now you've basically got to deal with this nasty enemy. And he's got a forced effect. After a shadow effect dealt to Nazgul of Dol Guldur resolves, the engaged player must choose and discard 1 character he controls. And as I mentioned before, losing characters in this quest is pretty bad because you can only play 1 per round. And we still have that effect on stage 2. So if you're not really ready to get rid of him, I would recommend just waiting it out. Okay, and then once you've got 15 progress and have claimed all the objectives, you move on to the 3rd stage, and the 3rd stage is where you escape. At the beginning of each round, you take the top card of your deck and play it in front of you as an orc guard, and it has a 1 hit point, 1 attack, 1 defense. So that quest stage tends to be a little bit easier, in my opinion, because now you can play as many allies as you want. So you've probably built up a bunch of allies and resources in your hand. You can play them all down. and then you can't advance from here until you've killed the Nazgul. So that's a basic setup for the Escape from Dol Guldur quest. The Nightmare scenario card doesn't actually change a whole lot of the quest. All it does is make it scale a little better. So now when you're playing 1 to 2 players, 1 hero gets captured. 3 players, 2 heroes get captured. And 4 players, 3 heroes get captured. So this makes the whole game scale a lot better for 4 players. Again, the initial staging area doesn't really change much, but the loss of 3 heroes in a 4-player game can be pretty significant. I haven't played any 4-player versions of Nightmare Dol Guldur. I'm not sure I have any desire to. So I can't really say for sure whether or not that extra effect really balances the challenge out for solo play. But I would be very confident in saying that this is the most difficult quest for the solo player in the game right now, in that there's really not a whole lot you can do to give yourself a high rate of success. I mean, if you're playing by the rules where you randomly choose a hero each time, if you have a deck that really depends on one of your heroes being captive, then you're taking a 66% loss rate from the get-go. And then add on top of that some terrible starting guarded objectives, and you lose an even larger factor. So there are other quests which are very challenging. However, I don't know of any where your rate of success would be so low as this one if you've built a deck specifically to beat it. So let's take a look at the Nightmare cards in the deck that have been added, because this is where the deck really ramps up in difficulty. So the Nightmare cards, they've got this new mechanic of adding resources to Dol Guldur locations in play. And let me find an example of a card. Here's Torture Chamber. So you're going to have an idea of how much more difficult the Nightmare version is here. So Torture Chamber, 3 threat, 6 progress required. If Torture Chamber has 4 or more resource tokens on it, all prisoners are killed and the players have lost the game. So at the end of each round, place 1 resource token on each Dol Guldur location in play. So this places progress tokens on itself and other copies of Dol Guldur locations and every other copy of Torture Chamber that happens to be out. And you could essentially lose your prisoners in 1 or 2 turns with all these effects that add tokens to Dol Guldur locations. So you need to get this out of the staging area ASAP, but it's got 6 quest points. So it's extremely hard to do, and there are multiple copies of this in the deck. Add on top of that these Surging Treacheries, which add 1 resource to each Dol Guldur location in play. You can have a turn where it's already half completed just at the end of your first turn before you've even had a chance to place progress on it. Some other Nightmare cards we have, so Spider of Dol Guldur. If there are any unclaimed objectives in play, Spider of Dol Guldur gains Surge. This thing is nasty. You might say, well, just claim all the objectives, right? Well, raising your threat by an additional 2 points every round, you don't want to claim that too early. Same with the damage to 1 hero every round. But what you might not realize is this can come out during the setup. So this thing comes out and attaches to the first guarded objective, and there are unclaimed objectives already in play because they're just sitting here. So this guy's going to surge a lot of the time, especially since you can't claim them all until you've freed them from encounters. So if he comes out anywhere near the beginning of the game, he's going to surge. Not to mention this shadow effect. Attacking enemy gets +3 attack for each unclaimed objective in play. So near the beginning of the game, this can come out as a shadow effect and be +9 attack. And you could have started with Beorn, thinking you were good defending, some weak enemy, but then Beorn's dead, just like that. Some more nasty effects here. Crazed Captive, he's doomed 1. If he's ever defeated, raise each player's threat by 7. So I'm not aware of any effect in the game that raises your threat by a static amount this much, other than his own shadow effect. So he's got the shadow effect. If attacking enemy is not defeated this phase, raise defending player's threat by 7 at the end of the phase. So this can come up on anyone. I mean, you could be defending this Spider of Dol Guldur. This thing pops up as a shadow effect. And now if you don't kill the spider, suddenly your threat's going to go up by 7 at the end of the round. It's just insane. And this guy, he's just going to have to sit there attacking you every turn because, I mean, if you ever defeat him, your threat goes up by 7. And he's going to be basically fuel for nasty shadow effects to come out and get you. There's a shadow effect on this. If a Dol Guldur location if there's a Dol Guldur location in the staging area, move 1 resource token from each of your hero's resource pools to that location. Resolve this effect for each Dol Guldur location. So this could wipe out your whole pile of resources. If you got a torture chamber up there, and you've got a resource token on each of your heroes, and then this thing comes out, it's going to pull 1 token from each of your heroes, put them all on torture chamber. It's going to have 3, and then at the end of the round, it's going to have 4, and you lose. So there are so many times I've played this quest where everything's been going well, and then suddenly some shadow effect comes out and completely wipes you. It's very... I mean, I think the shadow effects in this quest are also the worst in the game. You pretty much need shadow cancellation and reliable shadow cancellation in order to go up against this quest. Let's take a look at some more cards. Here we have the Dungeon Labyrinth. It gets +1 threat and +1 quest point for every resource token on it. And then at the end of the round, you place a token on it for each player in the game. In solo play, not so bad. It's just gaining 1 per turn, but quickly escalates. Soon you won't have enough threat to actually be able to complete it. Enough willpower to ever complete it. Then we've got Sentinel of Shadow. The staging area gets X threat until the end of the phase, where X is twice the number of players in the game. If the players quest successfully this phase, put the Nazgul of Dol Guldur into play, engaged with the first player. So if you plan to lose your first questing phase because you've got 3 things in the staging area and you're going to lose anyway, suddenly this pops out during staging and you quest unsuccessfully and the Nazgul's already engaged with you. So the number of turn 1 defeats here are quite high. Next we have Dark Interrogation. Each player must choose and discard cards from his hand until he only has 2 in his hand. And remember, all these cards can come out during the setup. So you could lose your whole starting hand during setup. Right. What else do we have? There's another Dungeon Labyrinth. Okay, this guy, 5 threat enemy. And I think there are 4 of him in the deck or something like that. And when he was revealed, he adds a resource token to each Dol Guldur location. So he pretty much fuels the whole mechanic here and makes you lose the quest. because of his high threat. And when you lose the quest, a bunch of stuff happens. So you can see in multiplayer, if these start comboing together, like if you have this Torture Master come out, you fail the quest, and then Sentinel of Shadow comes out, yeah, it gets pretty bad. We also have Catacomb Inspection. Okay, we already saw that one. There's another one of those guys. Dungeon Labyrinth. There is, let's see, have we seen them all? Yep, that's the whole deck. So you can see how difficult this is going to be just by looking at the new Nightmare cards here. You're going to have to reveal 3 during setup, and odds are you're going to get a really bad start, just based on the sheer density of the Nightmare cards here. And the ones that are left in are no breeze either. We got like Chieftain Uftak and well, these dungeon jailers that'll shuffle unclaimed objective cards from the staging area back into the deck. And the Beastmaster is probably the card I like to see the most, and that's saying something. Well, maybe this guy. I'm actually surprised they left him in. But he's low threat, so he engages you right away, and you have to be able to deal with him. Of course, he's got the Hummer horns there still. So that's the basic overview of the quest. My opinion on how to focus on beating this quest is to get Shadow Cancellation. You need Shadow Cancellation. I think Burning Brand is the best choice. Unless you have some other effect that you can do repeatably, because you need to cancel a lot of shadow cards. You can't just go through hoping to get lucky with all the shadow effects. There are just too many bad ones. So then what else besides Shadow Cancellation do you need? You need high attack if you want to kill them. One nice thing about this quest is there are few hard hitters with a base attack greater than 3. In fact, I don't think there's any other than the Nazgul. Of course, this chieftain, I mean, he buffs himself up over time, but there's only one of those in the deck. The rest of them have relatively low attack. So I've had some success with Beorn, in that you need to be able to defend a lot, and his action advantage is really helpful when you only have 2 heroes. But he is just really susceptible to stuff like this. +3 attack for each unclaimed objective in play. That'll just wreck him. And it's really hard to avoid that ever coming up if you're defending so many attacks. So remember that these, where are they? These little weak guys will often just be sitting there, just dealing you damage over and over again. Here. Because you're never killing them. And they will get shadow effects that will wipe you out. You need to... What else do you need? You need action advantage for sure. You only have 2 heroes. You definitely need action advantage. You could use methods of putting allies into play so that you can circumvent this restriction. So something like a Beorn deck with Elrond and Vilya can be successful, but again, you're really banking on not getting any bad shadow effects. Oh yeah, I haven't talked about this shadow effect yet. Any hero damaged but not defeated by this attack is turned face down as a prisoner. Then, if players are on stage 3, return to stage 2B of the quest. So if your hero takes damage from an attack, he basically disappears, and now you're left with one hero. How bad is that? I mean, you want to defend something with Beorn like this, and then he gets a shadow effect, and Beorn takes a damage, and he's gone. So there's a number of cards that just completely wreck any hero who's defending. Yeah, I mean, if you can build up some massive high defense defender who can take like a +9 attack, or I don't know, who's got 15 defense, then you should be fine, provided you don't get effects like this, which make you raise your threat by 7 if you don't kill the enemy. But it's really hard to do that quickly, and these shadow effects come out early. So I would say endlessly repeatable shadow cancellation, and then you need amazing location control. So Asphalloth is good with Glorfindel. I don't even know if it's good enough. It is pretty brutal with these torture chambers. Generally in solo play, you can try and Asphalloth it out of play in 3 turns before the 4th token triggers, but you're really risking it with stuff like Catacomb Inspection. One recent card that has just come out, which actually made me want to revisit this and attempt to get a better win rate, essentially, is Mariner's Compass. So Mariner's Compass, you attach it to a leadership or scout character, and then in the travel phase, at the beginning of the travel phase, you exhaust it and the attached character, and you get to search the top 5 cards in the encounter deck for a location and swap it with a location in the staging area. So you can let this build up to 2 or 3 tokens, and then trigger that and swap it out of play, and bring in a much better location, like something like, I don't know, Necromancer's Pass, something that doesn't have any nasty effect. You could even swap it out for another torture chamber if that's all you see, because it'll reset back down to 0 tokens. So this card, I think, pretty much is one of the key players, in my opinion, of beating this quest, Mariner's Compass. The other thing I'm going to personally build my deck around that has recently become viable is Path of Need. So Path of Need you attach to an active location, and when it's active, all your heroes do not exhaust to quest, attack, or defend. So if you combo this, so if you've got a Path of Need up here, if you have a hero with Burning Brand attached with 3 defense, you can defend an unlimited number of the enemies here with no chance of ever hitting a bad shadow, taking no damage, and you can do this repeatedly as long as you keep it active. So that's what I plan on doing. I plan on keeping Path of Need active, and there are ways of doing that and still advancing, using stuff like Strider's Path and West Road Traveler. And the reason Path of Need has become more playable, in my opinion, is because we have stuff like Heed the Dream now, that can search the card out of your deck. Because Path of Need is a card that you're only allowed to have 1 of in your deck. So it helps to have cards that can search your deck for it, like Heed the Dream. So we're going to be building a Heed the Dream, Path of Need, Burning Brand, and Mariner's Compass deck, and hopefully we can, through some trickery, neutralize all the things that this encounter deck tries to stack against you. It's really quite clever, the design here. I mean, having a single strong defender is a difficult option because you can get stuff like +9 attack on the enemy and stuff like If the defender takes a damage, he gets taken as a prisoner. But having allies defend is also risky because you can only play one ally card each round. And it's hard to really get strong combos going if you're only playing one ally each round. Like, you can't really pull out an outland strategy very well, at least, against this deck. So, in my opinion, it is designed to be excruciatingly hard, and it is excruciatingly hard. It was very successful in that regard. I still expect to lose 95% of the time. But it'll be interesting to see if the new cards that have come out in the card pool can swing the occasional game towards victory. So look forward to my video coming shortly. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth review of Nightmare Escape from Dol Guldur. Thanks for watching, and happy questing.